What's up guys, JCon72 here, and as some of you guys that watch my streams might know, I've been using the bow a lot lately. It's really a nice change from the conventional firearms that are usually used in DayZ and gunfights. It's definitely a lot harder to use than your average SKS or AK, but when you get a kill with it, oh my god, is it rewarding. So without further ado, welcome to my complete guide on the improvised bow in DayZ Standalone. I'll be going over the most basic steps on how to craft the bow and arrows, all the way up to more advanced tactics like damage models, how much you need to lead a target, and positioning so you can maximize your experience using the bow. So first off, we're going to start on the main menu. We're going to go into our character settings, and we need to choose any type of canvas pants to go on our character. The reason for this is that the canvas pants are the only type of pants in the game that your character can spawn with that are able to be cut into rags. Say you find a dead fresh spawn on the coast, you take his jeans, put them on, and then cut up your canvas pants, and you have an extra 3 rags. So once we pick a server and spawn in, this time I'm picking the Chipotle Bandits server. It's the one I own and I play on it most of the time I play DayZ. Once we spawn in, the first thing we're going to want to do is look for a stone. You can search for stones on any part of the coast by looking down at the rock texture and scroll wheeling till you get a search for stones option. It's very important that you do this on the coast immediately after you spawn because it's very hard to find this texture of rock up north. Once we've found our stone, we want to right click on it and craft a stone knife. Finding or crafting a knife in DayZ is not only key just for making a bow, but for pretty much every element of survival. You kind of need to eat, and if you don't find a can opener, well, I guess you're kind of screwed. Now the reason we need rags is because we need a rope to craft our bow. There are 2 ways that you can obtain rope. You can either find them in sheds or industrial buildings, or you can craft an improvised rope using 12 rags. This is where our improvised knife comes into play. You're going to want to start searching for any types of clothes that you can cut into rags. I find this method a lot faster than searching for a rope because searching for a rope can take a long time, whereas you can pretty much find clothes to cut up anywhere on the map. Once you've found enough clothing to cut up into rags, you're going to want to take your rags, add them into 2 stacks of 6, and then take those 2 stacks, drag them on top of one another to create an improvised rope. Now you're pretty much done the hard part of crafting your bow. Now all you need to do is take your knife and walk up to a tree. Any tree will work except for a birch tree as they don't offer long wooden sticks. You need to cut a long wooden stick from the tree and then combine the long wooden stick with the rope. You'll get 2 options for crafting. One for an improvised bow and one for an improvised fishing rod. Obviously, for the purposes of this guide, we'll be crafting the improvised bow. Once you've got your improvised bow, you're going to need to craft your arrows, which actually isn't that hard to do. To start off with your arrows, you're going to need to cut sticks from either a tree or a bush. Once you've got your sticks, you need to sharpen them with a knife. Now you can't do this with an axe for some reason, I'm not sure why, but it's just not possible. So you're going to need a knife. That's where your stone knife comes in once again. Once you've managed to cut a good amount of sticks and sharpen them, you're going to have sharpened sticks, which are the most basic type of ammunition that you can fire through your bow. There are 4 total types of arrows that you can fire. First is sharpened sticks, then improvised arrows, then bone arrows, and then finally composite arrows. The first 3 are able to be crafted, but you have to find composite arrows if you want to use them. For this guide, we're only going to be focusing on using the first 3 types of arrows and not the composite arrows because generally they're pretty hard to find, and because of that, they're not a reliable source of ammo. Now that we know how to craft the very basic type of arrows, let's look at how to craft the improvised arrows. For those, we're going to need chicken feathers. You can obtain chicken feathers in 2 ways. You can either find a chicken coop, which you can search for feathers just like you can with apples and stones, or you can find and kill a chicken which will have 20 feathers on it, and as well as having feathers, it'll also have 2 bones which you can use to craft the bone arrows. So if we want to craft the improvised arrows, all you need to do is drag the chicken feathers onto one of the sharpened sticks and craft an improvised arrow. You can stack each type of arrow up into stacks of 5, so make sure you do that to save inventory space. Now we know how to craft the basic sharpened sticks and the improvised arrows, so finally we'll learn how to craft the bone arrows, which are the highest tier of arrows that you can craft. Crafting the bone arrow is pretty simple. All you need to do is add a bone to an improvised arrow and there you go, you have a bone arrow. That's not the hard part of making them though. The hard part is finding enough bones to be able to make enough bone arrows to last. Bones can only be obtained by killing players or animals, so they're not that easy to come by. So if you do end up killing a player or an animal, make sure to skin the body and take the bones every time. They're definitely worth keeping, and I'll show you all why in the next few minutes of this guide. So now that we've crafted our bow and we have at least a couple of each arrow type, let's take a look at the damage model for each type of arrow and then take a look at what each type of arrow is best used for. First, we'll start off with the sharpened sticks. Don't use them, they're crap. In my experience, they've taken between 3 and 6 shots to kill a player, so they're not useful for PvP, and I'd say the only time you'd ever want to use one of them is for killing zombies at very short ranges. Despite how bad the Sharpened Sticks are for PvP, they do one-shot kill all zombies in every part of the body, as does every other type of arrow. I didn't mention how much you want to lead with the wooden arrows in PvP, or how much you want to raise the angle of your shot to hit a far range, because honestly, it's not really worth it. Let's just move on to the improvised arrows because they're much more exciting. The damage model on the improvised arrows is between a 1 and 3 shot kill. You're still hitting your target with a wooden tipped arrow, but it's moving a lot faster because it's got feathers on the tip of it to guide it through the air. For some reason that makes it faster, but you know, DayZ. Because of the increased speed of the improvised arrow, you can hit targets at much further ranges. I would say the effective range on a still target is roughly 75 meters, but you can definitely go further out and hit targets with little less reliability from up to about 100 meters. Outside of that range, I would say it's very unreliable and worth getting much closer if you're using only the improvised arrows. The effective range for the improvised arrows on a horizontally moving target is between 25 and 35 meters. Now that doesn't mean that you can't hit your mark past that distance, it just means that it's extremely hard to do so consistently. On a horizontally moving target at a distance of 30 meters, you're going to want to lead your shot by about 8 feet or 2.5 meters. For a stationary target at 30 meters, you're going to want to hold your crosshair about 1 foot above where you want to shoot. Something that I noticed today while recording for this video is that an improvised arrow doesn't break your leg. The same does not go for getting shot in the arm with an improvised arrow. You will receive a fracture and you'll have to use either a splint or a morphine to heal that. That's about it for the improvised arrows. Now we'll move on to everything about the bone arrows. The first thing I found out about the bone arrows that I didn't really know previously was that they fly ever so slightly faster than their wooden tipped counterparts, which means they'll fly further and drop a little bit less. I would say that the effective range with a bone arrow on a still target is between 85 and 90 meters. And as you can see on screen, it's definitely still plausible to hit targets way past 85 to 90 meters, all the way up to 120 and I'm sure much further. But once you get out to those super far distances, again, it's super hard to hit those shots consistently, so I would say 85 to 90 meters is the furthest you're going to want to take a shot in combat. Now, if we're talking about horizontally running targets, the effective range of a bone arrow is going to be extremely similar to the effective range of an improvised arrow. Because hitting a moving target is harder, at these shorter ranges, the slightly faster speed of the bone arrow will barely make a difference. Having said that, I would say the effective range on a horizontally running target is between 30 and 37 meters. Now, unlike the improvised arrows, a bone arrow will always break a player's legs and arms when shot there. That's pretty much all you need to know about the arrows. Now let's talk about some tactics that you can use with your bow and arrows to come out on top in a gunfight. The first and most apparent thing everyone should know about the bow is that you cannot move when you're pulling the string back. Because of this, unless you're using an ambush playstyle, you'll have to come out of cover to take your shot. Now say you pull the string back, but you decide you don't want to shoot. There are 2 methods of releasing the string without shooting your arrow. The first is pressing the R key on your keyboard. Now this does the exact same thing as if you were to hold a gun. It takes the arrow and puts it in your inventory, effectively unchambering the bow. Now if you don't have a free inventory slot, it will put the arrow on the ground. The other option for releasing the string while not shooting your bow is by crouching. Now this is my preferred method because it keeps the arrow in the bow, so if you do decide you want to shoot very quickly, you can go ahead and do that. Whenever you're trying to use the bow at longer distances especially, you're going to want to stand up and not crouch. When you're crouched, your hand is in the way of your line of sight, so if your target is more than 40 or 50 meters away from you, it's going to be very hard to see it and you'll have to shoot blindly. Also, I have to mention this, it seems that when you're crouched, the bow is less accurate. I can't actually prove this, that's just what I've found and what seems to be for me, so I thought I'd just include that. Another very important thing to note is that the bow is not accurate at all within the first second and a half that you pull the string back. If you do decide to, for lack of a better word, quickscope your enemy, your arrow will veer off target to the left. That's why when you see me using the bow in my videos, I'm always holding the string back for at least a second and a half. We have to remember that the bow is a defensive weapon. You're not going to be winning gunfights against people wielding M4s unless you're Robin Hood, but you're probably not, so don't try it, please. But if you do happen to get into a gunfight where you find yourself being chased, a really good tactic that I figured out over the last couple of weeks is to move into a house, corridor, or through a doorway. That way when the enemy is coming through the doorway, hallway, or house, their movement will be constricted and you can hold your arrow and crosshair in the center of that hallway, and if you time your shot right, hit it every time. Something else that a lot of you guys might know me for is headshots. Now a lot of people put them off because they're too hard of a shot to take, but if you can take the headshot, please do it. A headshot with an arrow or almost any weapon in the game will instantly kill a player almost 100% of the time. So if you can take a headshot, make sure you do it. Alright guys, that is it for the Ultimate Improvised Bow Guide. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd just like to give a couple of shoutouts. One to J6, one of my Twitch mods, an awesome guy who brought me a rangefinder after I couldn't find one for 2 hours. I really appreciate that, and it helped so much for the ranging in this video. I'd also like to give a massive shout out to everyone that came out to help me during my Sub Saturday stream. All of you guys helped out extraordinarily for the leading shots scene, and it couldn't have been done without everyone there. Trust me, no one wants to get killed by an arrow 15 times in a row, so I'm glad there was 15 people to take the shots. Thank you. For those people that sent me their YouTube and Twitch links for the shout out, check them out, links are on screen and in the description box below. And finally, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and by all means, please share this guide. It took a long time to make. Using the bow in DayZ is fun, so it's a good idea to get comfortable with it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.